Okay, you guys, just really quickly, I had the pleasure to sit down this afternoon with Seth and Wendy and Kathy Maggie at the helm and to interview John Dehlin. Tonight, you're going to see part one. This is where John talks about his life growing up, and just hang with it. It's fascinating. This is a man who brings something to the table that you aren't probably ready for, of who he was in the Mormon church. Next week, we're going to talk about Mormon stories. So that's part two. And the third week, we're going to talk about his belief in God, in faith, in the homosexual LGBTQ movement, all the stuff that he's about now. His excommunication is going to come up, all from the heart of this guy. He is a straightforward, straight shooter, and I really enjoyed our time together. So right now, let's take a look at part one. Okay, welcome our very special guest, Brother Maestro, Dr. John Dehlin. I can't tell you how grateful I am that John has taken time out of his busy schedule. He's a very busy man. Didn't have to do this, but he elected to. We go back a long way. John interviewed me on his Mormon stories back, we've been talking, I think 2009, numbers 221 and 222. And so we have some history between ourselves. Before we hear John, I just want to explain how we're going to do our time together so you'll know about tonight and the next week and the following here on Heart of the Matter. First, part one, I've asked John to just tell us his history. People are interested in the person. And he's very well known, especially in Mormon circles, and then outside of it too. So just asked him to talk about his upbringing, parents, brothers and sisters, interests growing up, sports, whatever, college, mission, get past the mission, and to right up to where he does his first Mormon stories. That's what we would like to hear from you. And if something comes up that I think's interesting, I'll interject.
All right.
Otherwise, it's all yours, brother.
Oh, I'm just going to monologue?
You're going to monologue, and I'll say, well, wait, and what do you think of this, sir?
Well, I have to say first, Shawn, it's so nice to be on Heart of the Matter.
Thanks.
You've been doing great work for so long, and I consider you a friend, and I respect your work and your persistence and your integrity. And so I'm just thrilled to be here.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having
Likewise.
So I just start going, huh?
Just start going. I was born
a poor child. No. I was born in Boise. My dad was born in Salt Lake here. Mm-hmm. And he was the son of like a ditch digger, Great Depression father. Mm. And my dad probably quit high school early, and never graduated from college. Or high school. My mom was born in Franklin, Idaho. She was more of your blue blood Mormon type. She was a Benson and a Parkinson. Wow. So Samuel Rose Parkinson, one of the early LDS church leaders, is one of her ancestors, ours, and she was a cousin of Esther Taft Benson. So she grew up on a farm in Franklin, Idaho, went to Preston High School, which is where Napoleon Dynamite was filmed.
Wow.
And she was my mother's mother, was the daughter of a third wife. So my grandmother, who I knew, was actually in a polygamous Mormon family in Idaho. So that's certainly got the Mormon pioneer credentials, as we all do. But I was the youngest of four. So my parents were married. Actually, my dad, my mom was going to marry kind of a basketball star from the University of Utah. And my dad, who was kind of this young, rough, kind of up-and-comer, stole her away from this kind of blue blood University of Utah basketball star guy who became like a doctor. So I think my mom wanted a little bit of danger and excitement in her life. And so that's what she got with my dad. So anyway, I was the youngest of four, and my parents spaced out. Gina's my oldest sibling. She would be 60. She's passed away. Then Julie, 55. My brother, 50, and then I'm 48. Joel's maybe 51. But I was born in Boise, Idaho, and lived in Boise and San Francisco for 2 years, and then it was all Texas. So 5 years in Dallas and 12 years in Houston, specifically Katy, Texas.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so I'm a Houstonian mostly and a Texan. And my dad was a policeman, and then he got into kind of government bureaucrat jobs, and he worked his way up, and that's what took us to Houston. He became an entrepreneur in Houston. And so, yeah, grew up there, and the church meant everything to our family.
Oh.
We were, I can remember the days when sacrament meeting and Sunday school primary were you'd go multiple times, and throughout the Sunday, I can remember starting out at a branch, and then we built a ward in Katy, and it was back in the time when the members would all help build the chapels, and I remember the days when, to print the program, you'd have the purple mimeographs that you'd have to hand crank, and I'm sounding really old, but
do you find you look on those days with some fondness?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you moved to a place like Katy, Texas, that was this kind of suburban sprawl. The big oil boom of Houston brought all these people from all over the world to this kind of sleepy rice, farming community outside of Houston. And you don't know anyone when you move there, and all the subdivisions are just sprouting up. And you all of a sudden have this instant community. Wow. And I remember the Chudley family that was from Waller, Texas, and he was literally a rice farmer, and he was branch president. Wow. And all his sons were kind of hicks and tall and strong and sturdy. And, the Laytons and Brother Layton, grew up with general authorities in Salt Lake. And so he could tell you about his stories with Heber J. Grant or George Albert Smith or David O. McKay. And he acted super spiritual, and he talked directly to God, and you just meet these really cool people, and they cared about you and you cared about them, and you'd grow up with their kids. And Mormonism was awesome back then.
Yeah. And I sense in you something I've always sensed in you. You had a love for people since I've met you. You love people, talking obviously with them, and that comes out from your youth. You're talking about the Laytons, and you're talking about the rice farmer, and you're talking about the buildings. You love that interaction with people. You've just carried it to a different place, but still.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. And it grew, but I can't believe I've never really gotten over how wonderful my adolescence was, going to, ward dances and stake dances and regional dances and stake scripture chase and regional scripture chase and dance festivals and road shows and temple trips. We actually chartered 3 buses and drove from Houston, Katy, all the way to Mesa, Arizona, because that was the closest temple. It was a 2 or 3 day drive. Crazy. Yeah. And the kids are all bonding, and there'd be teachers who would get up on the bus and teach about the signs of the times and the second coming and Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon, and you'd eat it all up, and Lex de Azevedo published that book on pop music and morality, and you felt like you were better than everybody else. Yeah. We were in this town of Baptists, the Southern Baptists. So Katy, Texas was a Baptist town. Wow. So they would hold, once a year, a seminar on Mormons and other cults, right? Wow. And so they'd show the God Makers, and all these kids would come to high school, asking me questions. Is it true that you believe that, Satan is God's son? And is it true you do these weird things in the temple? And I'm like, no, none of that's true, And the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which was very kind of Christian, they weren't sure they wanted a Mormon, as a part of their group. And, girls, when we'd start dating, their dads wouldn't let me date them. And there was this weird vibe of being super proud to be a Mormon, but being persecuted in a Baptist town, but that makes you more jazzed to be a Mormon. And I got off on never drinking alcohol and never smoking, never touching, a girl where you shouldn't touch a girl. Right. And it gave me this identity. I felt like I was better than everybody, and I loved it. And I was part of God's chosen people. I mean, who doesn't want to be part of God's chosen people? Sure. Yeah. So it was just, and I guess parallel to that, my parents got divorced when I was in 6th or 7th grade, and that could be devastating. But for me, it was just like the church was right there to raise me when my dad was busy or, off with his second wife or third wife or whatever. My mom was trying to get a job and earn a living because she was having a fetus. The church was just right there. I'd go to Scouts, I'd go to Mutual, I'd go to, seminary, and I have leaders that loved me and who looked after me and challenged me to be better and kept me on the straight and narrow and kept me out of trouble. And I wish everybody could have that upbringing without, I guess, the things that aren't true.
Right.
And without, I guess the arrogance and the exceptionalism became a burden, but it sure felt empowering at the time.
Sure. Do you think that same environment exists today for the youth?
No. I mean, maybe in pockets, but they do track. I know that means a lot to a lot of people, but I get the sense that the dances were just like
everything.
You were in California, right?
Yeah. Southern California, everything.
Do you ever dance? Do you remember your dance cards? We
yeah.
didn't have dance cards, but I heard you guys did. Just imagine an entire Stake Center wooden floor chapel filled with youth, and everybody's hopping and dancing, and the lights and the music, and nobody's sitting on the sidelines. Everybody's dancing together. It was joyous.
Yeah.
I don't know that dances are like that. When I talk to my daughters about like going to the Institute or the back when we were in the church, they're just like, oh, everyone stood around and looked at each other and it wasn't that fun. I don't know. I know they don't do road shows anymore.
They don't.
I don't think they do dance festivals unless there's like a temple that's being launched somewhere. I don't know. It feels like some of that magic has been lost, but I can't speak for.
Well, maybe it's been lost in our society in general, in some sense.
I do get the sense that when Boyd K. Packer kind of took control, he wanted simplify. He's quoted as being very sensitive to people having spent too much time at church and taking that away from the family or whatever. So I think they've tried to simplify and minimize all those activities. But for me, they were just marvelous. And anyway, I wish everybody could have that type of upbringing.
Yeah, it's idyllic.
It felt that way.
Yeah.
Until it didn't.
Until it didn't. Mom and dad divorced 6th grade, you say?
6th, 7th. I mean, it was like an on and off. It was kind of on and off again. My dad was disfellowshipped. That was super hard to go through. The shaming of that. I don't think he was, and I think he was always a good man, but he wasn't allowed to ordain me a deacon, and I had to have like Brother Layton ordain me a deacon.
Punitive.
It feels kind of yucky. Like that, and that was like probably my first crack in my testimony. I didn't conceptualize it as a crack at the time, but there's this plan, which is like, hey, families can be together forever. And you're singing, families can be together forever. And you're singing that in primary and you're super excited about how you have an eternal family. And then all of a sudden you don't.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, so every time that's harped on, well, that's not me. And then you're like, well, then will I be with mom or will I be with dad? Will there be visitation? And you start wondering like how that works and how much does it apply to you? And you compartmentalize it, but it's always in the back of your head. Even if you get married, you're still wondering, well, who am I with in heaven? And it makes heaven all of a sudden a sad place.
It does.
Ways. Yeah, sad heaven. I'm not a big fan of sad heaven.
No, sad heaven's not very nice.
Yeah.
The siblings.
Yeah.
Still active?
So that was interesting. My oldest sister, Gina, she was not able to find her Mormon boy. And so she married a non-Mormon. And I was really worried about her for so many years. I was like, oh, poor Gina. She married a non-Mormon. What's going to happen to her? She ended up, after she having her first kid, becoming the super Orthodox Mormon. Wow. She moved up to Canada, and she was really devout for many years, raised 3 kids in the church. And she was devout until her dying day. And she passed away just about a year and a half ago, colon cancer.
Oh, sorry.
And She was just like, up until the end, she's like, I pay my tithing, got my temple recommend, I'm ready to go.
Wow.
I'm like, aren't you a little sad? You know? She's like, nope, I'm ready. I'm like, okay.
Did her husband ever
Love
join?
you. No, he never joined. No, he
But
smoked.
they stayed together?
He smoked.
Darn it.
So
That darn smoking.
you can't,
Yeah.
you know,
He
So,
smoked.
yeah.
Nothing else needs to be said. Yeah.
can't follow, you know, the Lord if you smoke. I don't think.
He's too weak.
No, I don't. You know, he was also like, he never. I don't think he was kind of a common sense. He is a common sense guy, and I just think he's like, you guys think you're better than everyone, and one true church, and you're all kind of weird and a little bit judgy. I think he just never. It wasn't just that. I think he just kind of never bought it.
Got it. That makes sense.
But he was really good to my sister. He's been a loyal, faithful husband and father.
You mean that's possible?
I know.
Yeah.
Not just that, but we all in the family kind of looked down on him, like, oh well, he's, you know, maybe someday, you know, like he's not good enough. So that was my second sister, Julie. She lives in Kentucky. She's had 4 kids, and she's the most Orthodox of probably all of us.
Wow.
And she, you know, all her sons served missions, and they were all temple married. But, you know, it's hard to keep your kids in the church these days.
It is.
And in some ways, I think, you know, my oldest sister, I only think one of her 2 kids are still active of the 3. And then, yeah, I think my second sister too, her kids, one of her kids converted to Orthodox Christianity.
Wow.
After serving his mission and whatever.
As in Russian or Eastern? Or
yeah,
whatever?
Eastern Orthodox.
Wow.
From Mormonism.
Yeah.
Really smart guy, really great guy. Yeah, so, but I think sometimes the church sets people up. You give all your life to it, and it's about the missions and the temple marriage and families, and then the kids fall away, and all of a sudden you're like, well, then I failed.
Yeah.
Because how, you know, if you've given everything to the church and the eternal family, and then the family falls apart, what was your life for?
Right.
And then you got sad heaven again.
That's right. Sad heaven.
Sad heaven. So I love my sisters. I respect them. I admire them.
Is it reciprocated?
Yeah. Oh, they've always been nice to me. My sister Julie started volunteering for Fair Mormon several years ago, doing podcasts.
Wow.
Working with Michael Ash. You know who Michael Ash is? And I think, I don't know, but I have to think that she's like, well, John's doing all this work that isn't perceived as faithful. The world needs another Dehlin to kind of counterbalance.
It sounds like that.
So she kind of filled in, and but you know, we don't see the world the same. But I've always felt loved by her and supported, even though she could easily see me as an enemy to goodness. But she's never treated me that way.
Wow.
So that's been really good. My brother Joel, awesome, 7 kids. He was the chief information officer for the LDS Church for like 6 or 7 years. First name basis with the First Presidency Quorum of the 12.
Wow.
Yeah, he I think, you know, I don't want to totally talk for him, and he's in a sensitive position, but I think, you know, he's kind of, you know, not engaged like he once was, but still very supportive of his family, and still a great guy, and is still amazing, a huge support and friend to me. He lives here, so I'm closest to him.
Fantastic.
But maybe someday he'll tell a story, because he's seen the church from the inside, close up.
Wow.
Yeah.
He'd be a fascinating guy to spend an evening with.
Yeah, but he's a great guy.
Did you stay with mom, or go with dad, or jump around?
So I started with mom, and then mom moved out and dad moved in, and then I'd see mom on the weekends, and then I'd see dad on the weekends, and it was kind of a hopping around sort of situation. My mom's on her 3rd marriage, my dad's on his 5th marriage, and that made it a little bit turbulent. One of the things I'm really grateful for is that my parents never fought. So there was never this notion of custody. There was never a battle over possessions. They were just like, there's going to be no drama in this divorce.
Wow.
That doesn't mean there wasn't sadness
Sure.
or betrayal or whatever, but there was just no conflict.
Wow.
They'd both come to basketball games or soccer games. They'd both come to church events. They'd bring their spouses. No drama.
Wow.
No negativity. Neither would ever criticize or talk bad about the other.
Wow.
I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. The proof seems to be in the pudding because your siblings all have been married and stayed married, and they haven't had disastrous lives the way it goes when parents who divorce are selfish.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that made a big difference.
Wow.
And that's true.
Yeah.
I have the shortest duration marriage, and I'm about to hit 25 years.
Wow.
And all my siblings.
Look at that.
Yeah. So we're proud of that.
Yeah.
In terms of high school, I did basketball, I did track, and I played soccer and tennis and football and different years, different sports. But I think I was a good athlete.
Best sport?
It was basketball.
Wow.
Yeah, I could dunk by my freshman year of high school. I was 6'4" as a freshman, eventually 6'6", and I played with guys who went on to play college ball or in the NBA. I could have played college ball, but I wanted to go to Zion. I wanted to go to BYU because I had, had a scant pickings of Mormon girls growing up. Although I did date Renee Zellweger in high school. I don't know if you know that story.
I don't know that story.
Yeah, it's a good story. I've told it before, but I'll tell it again.
Let's hear it.
Do you want to hear it?
Oh, yeah.
You'll love the story.
I love it because she was married to Jack White, too.
Who's that?
Oh, he's a musician. One of my favorites, but go ahead.
She married him after Kenny Chesney?
Yeah, she married him before for a very short time.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I met Renee as a freshman in high school at Katy High School, and we were all 4 years together, became close friends over time. And, she'd have me over late at night. I wasn't like the guy she'd take to prom or homecoming, but I was the guy that she would call when she wanted to just hang out. So she'd call me over to her house, and we'd sing Beatles songs together and drive around and have picnics. And we went to the beach a lot, and it was just fun. She was a really sweet girl. She's a famous actress now. She's won an Academy Award, and for people who don't know. But my junior year, I was king of the stake. I thought myself as king of the stake dances, right? I DJ a lot of these dances, and these were really fun things. Yeah. So I'm like, this is my chance with Renee. I am going to invite her to a Mormon stake New Year's Eve dance. So it was New Year's Eve, 1986.
Wow.
Okay. And so and it's semi-formal. So I'm wearing like khaki pants and a blue blazer and a white shirt and tie, my standard outfit. And then Renee wears this black velvet dress, and she's really petite, she's a modest girl. Just so happens her dress was kind of right off the shoulder. And I'm just this 16-year-old boy. I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking how cute she looks and how excited I am that she's going with me to a dance. So I pick her up in my Buick LeSabre, and we drive, like 45 minutes to Bear Creek, and we go to the stake dance, and we walk in, and I'm just so pumped to because she's a great dancer. She was a cheerleader, and they did all these dances, and she was fun. She knew all the music, and we were going to have the best time. We walk into the stake center, and this young women's leader immediately spots us. And remember, Renee's not a member of the church, right? Yeah. So she says, oh, sorry, you can't come in here wearing that dress. Your shoulders, we can see your shoulders. Wow. And I'm like, oh, I got this. So I'm like, oh, just one second. So I pull the lady aside, and I'm like, she's not a member. She's not a member. Yeah. It's okay. She's not a member. She's like, oh, that doesn't matter. Like, all the other girls are going to feel kind of jealous and envious that she's showing her shoulders. So here's the deal. She says, either she goes home and changes, and remember, it's a 45-minute drive, or she can wear your blue blazer the whole dance, but she has to. And I'm like looking around, and Renee's like gone. And I'm like, so I go out to the parking lot, and she's walking in the car crying, and she's like, take me home.
Wow.
So I drove her all the way home.
Wow.
one of the worst nights of my life, by far.
Another crack in the...
She could have been Mormonism's Tom Cruise. She could have been Mormonism's John Travolta. Leah Remini.
Yeah.
You know, they blew it. They blew it. They could have had their celebrity.
Oh.
So, Mormon Church, you blew it with Renee Zellweger.
So I'm hearing two stories already, and I'm adding them up. One with your dad's disfellowship, a little crack maybe, and now Renee, it's there. It adds to the pile. It has to. It makes me so angry to hear these stories. So
Yeah.
it must have had some kind of really.
That was super disappointing because I really loved Renee, or at least I thought I did, as
Yeah.
much as a 16-year-old could love anyone. I also remember when blacks got the priesthood,
Yeah.
and I remember polygamy, just that never making sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember once dividing the number of Mormons in the world, and this had to have been when I was getting all this adversity from my Baptist friends, dividing the number of Mormons in the world by the number of people in the world. And I got like less than 0.5%.
Wow.
And we were so orthodox back then that, Bruce R. McConkie seminary kind of like orthodoxy. I was like, man, if this is God's one true plan for all his children, he's super inefficient. He's really ineffective. And if my Baptist friends know that they're true, and then my other, what's the charismatic, my friend who's Pentecostal, they know they're true. We think we're true. So, I mean, I never, ever at that point ventured to the point of asking, is it really true and could it not be true? That wasn't even, didn't allow my mind to go there. But certainly I had those items that I started putting on the shelf. By the way, I had this crazy, Elder Layton is my seminary teacher. He keeps coming back. This is the guy who told me once that he had special spiritual powers, that sometimes he would sit in the back in sacrament meeting and tap people on the shoulder spiritually, where they wouldn't know so they would he would tap them on the shoulder and they would kind of look around. He would tell us he had these kind of powers. And then he once did 2 object lessons for us. And maybe you've done this. He once brought a life-size cross into the seminary and he asked me to play Jesus.
Whoa.
And he drove a nail and he nailed me to the cross and he asked me to writhe in pain in front of my fellow seminary students while he nailed me to the cross. And I was stoked that he picked me to play Jesus.
Bet.
You know what I mean? But it was super awkward to writhe in pain in front of my fellow seminary
Wow.
students. It's like, as Elder Layton's nailing me to the cross.
Religious people are crazy. Keep going.
Have you ever done that?
No.
It's an object lesson.
Oh, it is an object lesson. It's an objectionable lesson, but go ahead.
The other object lesson he did that I'll never forget, he cleared out, he put our seats in a semicircle and he put like 8 stones in the middle of the room, like in front of us. And he's like, so I know that at some point I've probably offended some of you. I've probably hurt your feelings. I've probably said something that was hurtful. And I want you to know that I'm not worthy. And so I invite you all to stone me. And he like kneels down in front of us and just like kind of lowers his head. And we're all just like, and then he starts weeping uncontrollably. Whoa. And he starts sobbing.
Wow.
And this is like 10, 15 minutes. You know how long that is, right? And then finally, he kind of just wipes his tears off and stands up. And that was the lesson. You know what I mean? Wow. It's just super intense. You know what I mean?
Intense.
But like you get your patriarchal blessing and it tells you you're going to rise in the morning of the first resurrection. Mm-hmm. And you get ready for your mission and you feel like you're going to convert the world and all that Bruce R. McConkie orthodoxy, Mormon doctrine just makes you feel like you're chosen. Yeah. So it sounds weird. It sounds kind of cultish in some ways. And I was like, I graduated, like 11th in my class of 400 kids, honor society, student body president, captain of the varsity basketball team. I was actually received a scholarship. The Elks Lodge for the entire state of Texas had a scholarship program where you'd like, if you won for your school, you'd get a $200 scholarship. And then if you won for your county, you'd get a $500 scholarship. And then if you won for the state, you'd get and I was actually selected as the student of the year for the entire state of Texas for the Elks Lodge. I mean, that's not like,
it's money.
Texas is huge,
huge.
And it was several $1,000s, and I got, a full tuition scholarship to BYU for 2 years. And like, I was on cloud nine. Yeah. I kind of ruled the high school and kind of ruled the stake. And I felt like nothing could stop me.
You were the guy. I got the picture. Did you, just really quickly, as deacons, teachers, priests, were you in leadership with that?
Yeah.
Participate in ward council and all that stuff too?
All that stuff.
So you have the pedigree.
Seminary president. Yeah.
Stake dance king.
Yep. Yeah.
BYU.
Living the dream. Yeah. And then I didn't even apply. I could have gotten into lots of colleges, universities, scholarships, University of Texas, Texas A&M, whatever. Didn't even apply. Just BYU. That was it.
Where'd you live?
I lived in Hillman Halls in Chipman Hall back when Chipman Hall was a male. Now it's a female dorm, but back then it was the honors dorm in Hillman Halls. Oh. And it was such a cool ward that Elder Holland's daughter, Mary Holland, attended that ward because she lived with him in his mansion, president's residence
on campus.
But this was the ward that she would attend. So I actually dated Mary Holland as a freshman at BYU, and I played tennis with Jeff because she set it up, and so I've actually played a full set of tennis with Elder Jeffrey R. Holland.
Wow. Did you beat him?
I beat him bad.
Good job.
Now he told me that his Achilles had ruptured or something, so he
was lying even then. Just kidding.
But I think he had. I think it had. I think I beat him 6-0 or 6.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was kind of.
So you're friends with his daughter?
Yeah, she was great.
Wow.
She's still around here.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So BYU, how long did you go before the mission? 1 year?
Just 1 year, and it was amazing. And Elder Holland was my Book of Mormon teacher. I did honors, Book of Mormon, and yeah, it was like I was, I went to Temple Square just like Dorothy when she goes to Oz. I remember I drove to Temple Square and parked my car and walked around and saw the Christus and, went to General Conference in the Tabernacle before the Meganacle was built, and heard the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and saw the prophets and apostles speak from the podium. And I just was soppy, Marvin J. Ashton, L. Tom Perry, and Neil A. Maxwell, and you know what I mean? I knew all the names. I could tell you the apostles in order, their order of succession, and I wrote down their quotes and marked my scriptures, and I was in it, just
fascinating.
Ezra Benson, I think, had become prophet by that point. He was my cousin, and so that was super cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sold out.
Heady time.
Yeah.
It was a heady time.
Yeah. And a lot of it pointed to your ego.
To what?
Your ego.
Oh, well, I mean,
when you look back, wasn't it ego driven?
Oh, yeah. To this day, I still haven't tried beer, and it's ego. It's just it's something I've never done, and I can tell people I've never tried alcohol, I've never tried cigarettes, I've never tried drugs. You know, I'm better. It makes you feel like you're better than people.
Yeah.
And that gives you a sense of confidence and security.
Mm-hmm.
In a world that can be scary.
Are there vestiges of that in you still?
There's got to be.
Yeah.
There's got to be.
So the mission, where was the call to? Guatemala?
Got called to Guatemala, and didn't know where Guatemala was. I thought it was South America.
Isn't it? Sorry.
Basically, everything south of Texas was Mexico to a Texan.
A Texan, yeah.
Yeah, it's just all Mexico. I didn't even know that they spoke Portuguese in Brazil at that point. You know what I mean? It's just all Mexico. So, no, not that bad. But I had to look it up on a map. But my dad didn't really want me to go. That was really interesting because my dad He's just like, you could get hurt. Like, why aren't you just going to like Winnemucca, Nevada? Like, why do you need to go to a third world country? By this time, he was struggling with parts of the church because of that disciplinary council and just how he was treated. He would just say to me, he would say things like, the temple's weird. You know what I mean? And this is before they made the changes. So this is when you do the penalties and the signs and the tokens and the, you know, and he's just, you know, I'm like, well, Dad, you can't say the temple's weird. You know what I mean? And but he's like, I'm just telling you, I've never really gotten much out of the temple, and it kind of freaks me out. And then like there was F. Benson's big push in the MTC for like Book of Mormon, flood the earth with the Book of Mormon. And I remember for some reason I had to talk to my dad on the phone in the MTC, and he's like, I've always been a New Testament guy. Like, Book of Mormon's just never really spoken to me. I'm like, Dad, you can't say that. I'm in the MTC. You know what I mean?
Wow.
He's just like, it's about Jesus. It's about service. It's about love. He's still that way. He's your kind of Mormon. He's just a Jesus Mormon.
Wow.
You know, and he's always been that way. It's like service.
Yeah.
For my dad, religion was stopping to see someone whose car is broken down on the side of the road and fixing their flat tire, taking them to get help with their car.
Wow.
It was someone needs help moving, you go help them move.
He's still that way.
Totally that way.
Is he still LDS?
Still LDS.
Wow.
But not
the way LDS. Sorry, LDS.
He's not Orthodox at all.
Yeah.
Not Orthodox. He's like, he would probably just say, I'm a Savior Mormon. Now it's about the Savior.
Yeah.
Like Joseph Smith, Book of Mormon, Temple, Jesus.
I really liked him when I met him.
Yeah.
He was nice to me, and he knew what I did, and he was very respectful. I really liked him, yeah.
He's super open-minded in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was weird to have my dad like kind of, you know, but I was just like, well, Dad, you know, he's, you know, he made mistakes and.
Yeah. Oh, you had that a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It's like poor Dad. And, but you know, again, that ego. Yeah, I think that.
So good to hear.
Oh, for sure.
For
sure. Yeah.
You had gone through the temple when we did all this.
Yeah. I slit my throat and I disemboweled myself. And, you know, they mocked Christians and, you know, they had a pastor with a collar and mocked the crap out of him. And you know, and Bruce R. McConkie had said the Catholic Church was a great abominable, and there was a lot of pride, Mormon pride and judgment. But yeah, the temple freaked me out. My brother took me through. I don't know why. It was the Jordan River Temple, and I got into it because you have to. That's just what you do. But it was just like, why am I slitting my throat?
So you had some questions,
for sure. Wow. But more shelf.
Yeah.
Shelf. Yeah.
Who the mission president?
Yeah, my mission president was Gordon Romney. He's he would have grown up with ancestors in the colonies of Mexico. Oh. So Mitt Romney and his dad, the governor, what was his name? The other Romney. They all would have come from Mexico. It was like the way the Mormon Church could avoid the laws outlawing polygamy by sending their members to Canada and Mexico. So anyway, he spoke fluent Spanish, and he had worked for like IBM. He was this kind of corporate businessman type, and he was just all about becoming the highest baptizing mission in the world. Wow. So very quick into my mission, there'd be like companionships who were getting 10 baptisms a month, 20 baptisms a month. And I'm like, this is cool. We're baptizing like and we started 400 is a mission, 400 baptisms a month, 500 baptisms a month. And I'm like, it's a miracle, but then you find out, they baptized a drunk, or they baptized a 7-year-old, and you start going, well, that's kind of weird. Or they baptize little kids, little 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. And immediately that was like this disconnect, because it felt like, and he implemented these incentive techniques to convince missionaries to get, so it was like if you had 7 baptisms a month at zone conference, you'd stand up in front and get a little certificate with your name on it and 7 baptisms a month. So you get to take that home and you've got the little certificate. He had if you got 10 baptisms a month or more, you got a Janis Cat Perry cassette tape, Serving with Joy. And, and then every month he'd have a party for all the companionships that had 10 baptisms a month or more. So wherever you are, you'd come to the Capitol, you'd have like a nice lunch, a party, and a steak dinner, whatever. And it was just like these sales incentives. And then he had a monthly newsletter that had, all the top baptizing companionships and their numbers. Wow. And slowly you'd see these numbers, 10 a month, and then 20 a month, and then 30 a month. And by like a year into my mission, there were companionships getting 40 baptisms a month. I want you to think about that for a second.
Oh, yeah.
That's more than one a day.
Yeah.
How do you baptize more than one a day on your mission?
Wow.
And then, so I would ask around. I'm like, because you got these stories of like Mormon missionaries in England baptizing entire towns or congregations. Like, how do we do this? But then it's like, oh, you don't want to know. I'd talk to someone who was in one of these zones where they'd have 40 baptisms in one companionship, and it'd be like, we went to a soccer field, and we played soccer with the poorest part of town, with the kids without teeth and like barefooted. Parents were working in the finca. Play soccer with 10 kids for an hour, get them super hot and dusty, and then say, let's go back to the chapel and cool off, right?
Wow.
So they take them, no lessons, never been to church, no parental consent.
Wow.
Right?
Amazing.
And then they baptize them, just 10 at a time. I had a companion who told me that kids were literally doing cannonballs in the baptismal font.
I'm sorry I'm laughing, but it's just there's a humorous side to this.
And then, so they'd get their 10 for, that Saturday, and then they'd party all week. They'd travel to other countries with the mission car. They would, go to movies. They would watch TV. They would listen to pop music. And then the next Saturday, do it again. Wow. And so it was just total fraud. And I even pulled my mission president aside at different points. I'm like, President, it feels like we're not always getting converts, and it feels like we're not always, really building the kingdom. Sometimes it feels like we're just like focusing on numbers. And he's like, Elder, you don't understand. Like, if you baptize them, as soon as you baptize them, they get the gift of the Holy Ghost. And once you give them the gift of the Holy Ghost, it can activate in them and it can transform their lives. And even if they fall inactive, they have the gift of the Holy Ghost, so it can reawaken in them later. Whereas if you don't baptize them, they don't have the gift of the Holy Ghost. Wow. And by placing a Book of Mormon in their home, who knows if a family member will stumble on it later and then get rebaptized later. So we're planting seeds by baptizing them that can sprout in who knows what ways later. Wow. And then he said, and even if they never are active during their lifetime, if they die, we won't need to do their temple work for them because we will have already baptized them.
Oh my goodness.
So there's no downside. So baptize. You know what I mean?
What'd you think of the explanation?
I felt sick inside. Wow. I feel like I was doing it for the right reasons. Like, I was like, these are sacred ordinances and people need to be converts. And, you don't just, you don't just pervert God's holy ordinances for statistics. I mean, it felt like my mission president, Gordon Romney, was trying to become a general authority. And he wanted to do that by having the highest baptizing mission in the world. We reached something like 750 baptisms a month.
Unbelievable.
And, at the time, like only Chile, Viña del Mar, had over 1,000. And it turns out they were doing beach party baptisms where they would like have parties at the beach and baptize people. And Elder Holland closed over 30 stakes in Chile alone in the aftermath of those 80s years. Wow. Where it was just kind of like coked up, fraudulent baptisms. So that was the first major break to my testimony, because I finally confronted my mission president about it as a zone leader. I was like on the track. I'd been branch president twice on my mission. Wow. I had opened up areas. I had grown. I had opened up an area with no members, and by the time I left, we had 40 people attending church every week. Then I went to an area with like 40 members, and by the time I left, there were like 80 or 100 people attending every week. I was growing these areas, serving as branch president, zone leader, but I confronted him, and I just said, this feels wrong. And this is about 20 months into my mission. And he screamed at me, and he just said, don't ever challenge your priesthood leaders. How dare you question what we're doing? If you ever do this again, I'm going to demote you from zone leader. And then he exiled me to Uspantan Quiche, which was not even technically like in our mission. It was a 5-hour bus ride to the nearest telephone. Wow. And then a 6-hour bus ride. So like an 11-hour bus ride to the mission home. Wow. And it was clearly to exile me so that I wouldn't mess up the good thing that he had going, that I wouldn't spread the word, and that I would feel punished for forever crossing him. And that put a dark sort of like spot in my heart that lasted up until my excommunication. Like, because that felt like deep abuse and fraud. And I came home from my mission. They actually came home. They gave me a chance to end early, honorably, because I got sick in that last area. I said, President, I'm sick in this area. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll send you home. So he sends me home 4 months early. And I'm like, but I'm like Nephi. Like, I'm not going to end my mission early. So I'm like, no, send me freaking back out. Like, so I ended up in Arizona, Phoenix, Mesa, Gilbert, Chandler, Tempe. Served my 4 months there. They made me a zone leader again over Spanish-speaking missionaries, and finished my mission honorably. Wow. But while I was there, I'm like, this is my chance. I'm going to tell church headquarters that Gordon Romney was doing this stuff, and they're going to like helicopter in to Guatemala and like excommunicate him and fix everything. So I like tell my mission president, who is an outgoing mission president who had just been called as a general authority, Durrell Woolsey. He's going to the Philippines. I'm like, Elder Woolsey, I have to tell you what happened on my mission. So I like tell him the whole story. You know what I mean? And he's like, jaws open, like, oh, I'll tell Salt Lake, don't worry, I'll take care of this, And then weeks go by, and I'm like, did you ever talk to Salt Lake? Did you ever work that out? And he's just like, you know what, Elder Dehlin, I talked to Salt Lake, told them the story, and they feel like it would cause a big stir if they did anything. So they've just decided to let President Romney finish out his mission. And then later, when he got home, he was called to serve on the missionary committee for the church. Wow. And he was called to preside over the sesquicentennial celebration that the church had back then.
That was huge.
And he was in charge of it.
Wow.
And that's when I'm just like, does the fish rot from the head?
Wow.
That was the first time I'm like, and the way I justified it was like, well, the church is perfect, but the leaders aren't. You know what I mean? That's how I put all that on my shelf. But I always had this dark space in my heart. And even Elder Oaks, I wrote a letter to Elder Oaks telling all of my mission, wrote like this 8-page letter, included like proof of all the certificates, photocopies of the newsletters and the certificates and all that stuff. And he called me personally, Elder Oaks, an apostle, to apologize for what happened. But they never, I still hear that these things continue to go on. They've never made a policy denouncing these type of tactics. They've never, I think the activity rates in Latin America are like 10%.
Yeah.
5% in some places. Yeah. So it's a Potemkin town. It's a total fraud. Our numbers, we claim 16 million Mormons or whatever, but we've probably got 5 on the books. And a huge millions are these fraudulent baptisms in Brazil, South America, Chile, Argentina, Guatemala, Mexico, and the Philippines. And I'm sure we're bapping it up in Africa right now. Sure. And I'm sure that's the only way that our membership looks like it's not declining. Is we're going to make up statistically in Africa for for where we're losing in Western Europe and in North America. You know what I mean? So
What happened to Romney besides the sesquicentennial and the mission?
he ended up as an adjunct faculty at BYU teaching computer science, and he's an entrepreneur. And, he came to my wedding reception.
Wow.
It's kind of awkward. I hadn't done the podcast by that point, so he would have had no reason to. So anyway, I was grateful that he never was made a general authority like that. For me, I think if he had been made a general authority and he was gunning for it, I think I would have lost my testimony. But he didn't, and Elder Oaks apologized, and so that allowed me to kind of hang on. But at BYU, I always had this dark. That's when the criticism. I learned about Sunstone. I learned about the September 6th.
Sure.
That was my senior year at BYU, 1993.
Wow.
Joanna Brooks was marching with feminists, and they were marching for abortion and for women's rights and against rape and sexual assault. So I kind of had this intellectual awakening at BYU, of all places, from 1990 to 1993. And that's when I learned about a little bit more about church history, a little bit more about intellectual dissent, but it was all framed within faithful, because back then you could be a Sunstone Mormon and still be a believer. That's probably still true. So you learn about Lowell Benyon or Eugene England, and it's like, oh, well, you can be like an intellectual, edgy, progressive Mormon and still be active. Oh, well, that's what I'll be. And so BYU radicalized me, but at the same time liberalized me. So I just was like a kind of a liberal Mormon, where, I got married in the temple and stayed faithful and would stay super active, but it would, I wasn't gunning for bishop. I was like, I might wear a different colored shirt sometimes to church, or I might.
A little radical.
I might ask harder questions and, or teach Sunday school or elders quorum lessons that push the envelope a little bit, and you know what I mean, or wear Birkenstocks at church or whatever it was, just as a way to say, hey, I'm in the program, but I'm not a lackey. You know what I mean?
I do.
And that's how I dealt with that dark spot in my heart. I'm just like, I can't give everything, but I'm going to still be committed. Does that make sense?
Total sense. What'd you study at BYU?
Political science.
Graduate from BYU?
I graduated summa cum laude with a 3.96 GPA.
Holy cow.
And got, full rides. And it was, I applied to Harvard Law, and I applied to University of Texas Law and BYU Law. I did a congressional internship on Capitol Hill. So I, went back to DC, and I rubbed shoulders with senators and congressmen. And I think I wanted to be a politician at the time. So I was going to go to law school, become a politician. And that was, and so I was graduated from BYU prep to do whatever I wanted.
And married.
I married right at the end. So right at the end. Like the month I graduated, December of 1993, Margie and I got married in the Washington, D.C. temple. I dated Elder Hatch's daughter, Senator Hatch's daughter, Alyssa, and I was just like, I was poised to be a big Mormon deal.
Wow.
Whatever that means.
I am telling you, I can't believe, I believe it, having talked to you, and you're eloquent and you're a very good interviewer and everything, but I can't believe how much integrity you have coming into the story. You were sold out. I know the guys like you. David Tuckfield was the guy in our stake. You were the David Tuckfield. He's in Washington, D.C., lawyer now. He was the king of this, and he has the smarts. You were that guy. So that lends to such integrity and credence to who you are as a person. It really makes a lot of sense in what you're doing now. So you married Margie. Then what did you do?
I went to work for Bain & Company. So that was this elite management consulting firm that Mitt Romney started. Wow. He started it in Boston after he went to Harvard Law.
You say Banyan?
Bain.
Oh yeah, Bain.
So Mitt Romney became rich and famous by starting Bain & Company. Yeah. And, they were a Fortune 500 management consulting firm. So that was my first real job out of college. It was like BYU guy, Harvard guy, Stanford guy, MIT guy, you know, that's Chicago guy.
Wow.
Like that's who Bain hired.
Wow.
Was elite undergraduates from Ivy League universities. So that, you know, and so I was immediately consulting Continental Airlines. I helped in the merger of Lockheed and Martin Marietta,
Wow.
these two defense contractors. And it was the golden ticket to, you know, to wealth. And so I did Bain for a year, but I hated it. It felt like you know, it was like, you know, Harvard CEO of Fortune 500 company wants to have this arbitrage opportunity of like swooping in and fixing 12 things to increase the market cap of the corporation and then sell it for this big differential and bail with his parachute and get rich. And so we as consultants would be brought in to like downsize and like fire a bunch of people or like privatize this or that. You know, so that we could claim this sort of superficial gain in profitability so that someone could cash out with the differential. You know what I mean?
I do.
And it felt dirty, you know? It didn't feel like we were creating real value. We were firing people. And it just felt gimmicky. And I'm not, that's not to disparage the management consulting industry.
Yeah.
But for me, I'd watched too many Frank Capra movies at BYU. Probably my favorite class of all at BYU was this theater and film like 117 with Charles Menton.
Loved it. I had it with Menton.
Yeah. So you see like It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and You Can't Take It With You and freaking Man for All Seasons.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And you learn about Sir Thomas More and how he stood up against King Henry VIII and was executed for it. And you see this, it's, you know, You Can't Take It With You. And it's like nothing matters in life if you haven't led a meaningful life. And I bought it. It was like, that was my religion. And Christianity bolsters that, you know, like, so
should.
like, what?
It should.
It should. So at Bain, I'm just like, this just feels gross.
God, it seems like Bain was just the corporate example of what you experienced in your mission president.
It totally. I mean, Romney, it was another Romney.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure Mitt Romney's a great guy,
Yeah.
but it just felt gross. It felt dirty. So the internet had, you know, we're talking 1994, 95 now. The internet had just come onto the scene. And I'm like, that's going to be a big deal. That internet thing, I'm following that. So I left Bain after 1 year. Nobody leaves Bain after 1 year. What you do is you do Bain 2 years, then you go to Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Chicago, or Northwestern, get your MBA, and then you get your six-figure salaried job that takes you to millions of dollars within 5-10 years. Like that's everyone who works at Bain or McKinsey goes on that track. I left that track after 1 year and went to Arthur Andersen in Chicago, which was an accounting firm, the top accounting firm in the world at that time, to learn technology because Bain didn't want to follow technology at the time. So I did a year at Arthur Andersen, learned technology, left Arthur Andersen, became a programmer, computer programmer. Because at least I felt it was creative and I felt like I was automating processes. I was helping businesses be more efficient. It felt more tangible and fun than management consulting. And then interestingly, I was hired by the LDS Church as a contractor to do computer programming for the Mormon Church.
Wow.
So in like 1996, 97, I moved to Salt Lake City from Chicago and did programming for the church for a year. And the coolest project that I worked on was a general authority candidate tracking system.
Wow. I thought it was all by inspiration.
Well, it may be, but they needed some, you know, so
Did you create it?
Well, no, I maintained it.
I maintained it.
Yeah, and improved it. So basically you would have general authorities that would travel to missions and interview mission presidents. They would travel to stakes and interview stake presidents and call new stake leaders. And then they would travel to temples and visit temple presidencies. Wow. And so those were the candidates for general authority, former stake presidents, mission presidents, and temple presidents. But when, you know, let's just say Marvin J. Ashton goes to Nebraska and meets with the mission president there, they would need some sort of organizational memory. Like because they had all this criteria for becoming general authority. Do they have a lot of debt? Are they successful in their business? Are they in a happy marriage? Do they have any like troublesome spouse? Do they have a troublesome child?
Wow.
Have they gotten into debt? Would they be an embarrassment for the church? Have they committed infidelities?
Wow.
You know, are they, successful?
Yeah.
And so you'd need to write all that down as a general authority so that future general authorities that come could know over time how this person was progressing in their candidacy for general authority.
Amazing.
So this computer system tracked all that.
Wow.
And that was one of the main things I did.
We're going to stop this for, I am so excited to continue on with part 2 to see what happens with John in his life. We know what happens actually, but I don't know how it happened. And then we will hit part 3 following thereafter. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.